Hi there, and welcome to the third and final edition of CGTN Africa's digital take on climate change. Now, over the past 2 weeks, we've looked at the toll the climate crisis is taking on some of Africa's most iconic ecosystems. From the melting glaciers of mighty Mount Kilimanjaro to the worrying advance of the Sahara Desert. This week, we'll be looking at yet another area that's become a front line in Africa's climate change battle. And that's the multi-million hectare rainforest of the Congo Basin. Now, take a look at this. The Democratic Republic of the Congo in Central Africa boasts of massive rain cover, nearly 2/3 of the entire territory. In the last 2 decades, this rich and biodiverse ecosystem has come under serious threat from deforestation, driven by agricultural encroachment, charcoal production, and mineral exploitation. But among the greatest risks to the Congo's forests is industrial logging. Earlier this month, at the height of the COP26 conference in Glasgow, Scotland, the DRC government made official its plan to ban logging for exports in order to ease pressure on the country's forests. I'm on my way now to speak to Zahra Molo, producer of Saving the Congo Forests, to learn more about the making of the documentary and to learn what's changed since. Zahra, tell us a bit about the inspiration behind this film and a little bit about what was going on with climate change at the time.
I had worked in Congo before, and I was interested in looking at sort of what was happening with the forests there. And so we found out about the work of Rainforests Congo, who is the Congolese environmentalist. In 2009, he won the Right Livelihood Award, which is the otherwise known as the Alternative Nobel Prize, for his work in protecting the forests in Congo. And he had founded an organization called OCEA, which initially was an environmental NGO in Kisangani, but they managed to spread out across the country, and with the help of volunteers, and they were involved in, creating reforestation nurseries for trees, for threatened species. They were monitoring the exploitation of natural resources, and they also did a lot of education work through radio and TV broadcasts. So we were very interested in his work, but also in showcasing more what was happening in terms of the rainforests of Congo. You see the impact of deforestation. The Congo Basin forests have actually been the target of a lot of industrial scale developers and palm oil plantations, logging, mining, commercial farming. So this has really encroached on these forest areas.
Can you help us understand a bit about the role that massive forests like these play in the global climate system? How important are the forests as a carbon sink for planet Earth?
Yeah, so the Congo Basin forests, it's actually the second largest tropical rainforest on the planet. And, in the documentary, I think we say it's like the lungs of the continent. The Congo Basin trees actually absorb a huge amount of carbon dioxide. I think there was an estimate by the Central African Forest Initiative that said they absorb 4% of global carbon dioxide emissions out of the atmosphere. So this is hugely important for the planet. And actually there is one area of peatland in the Republic of Congo, which is about the size of England and is one of the biggest carbon sinks on the planet. And in 2020, there were plans to drill for oil there. And if that were to go ahead, that would release about the same amount of annual emissions as Japan, according to one estimate. So, it's hugely important. It will have a huge impact on the climate.
The government of the DRC agreed to put into action a plan to ban logging of trees for export in that country. Having followed the story of Rainforests Congo and other environmentalists in the country, how optimistic are you about this plan, and do you think it's a ban that could really take hold?
This announcement came, it was just, at the same time as COP, so it was quite timely or strategic, and it came just after the government tried to lift a moratorium on issuing new industrial logging permits. So there has been a moratorium on industrial logging in place since 2002, and there have been repeated attempts to remove that moratorium. So it's difficult to see how this is going to work, because also the global demand for wood is not going down. And so I'm not sure how this ban, if it will actually go ahead, how it will be enforced. or if it's just, sort of part of the pledges that people are making in COP and actually is not going to follow through. Given the history, it's, I guess we will have to see.
What do you make of carbon credit schemes, and are these genuinely a way to offset the impact of fossil fuel extraction, or is it simply a way for companies to greenwash their image on the cheap?
It does enable these industries to continue polluting. They don't have to make changes in carbon emissions. So it's a very good way for them to greenwash their image. They don't have to pay very much for the credits that they buy. And actually, since the scheme of carbon trading was introduced, global emissions continued to increase. So it actually hasn't changed anything.
Zara, finally, as a filmmaker, a producer, a member of the media, what role do you think storytellers like us have in painting a picture of the climate change fight and encouraging people to do what's needed in order to reverse some of the most catastrophic side effects?
This is also a very interesting question. I think, so far, I think the media hasn't treated the climate emergency as an emergency. And there's a very important historical reason for this, which is that the fossil fuel industry actually poured millions of, like a huge amount of money over decades to create doubt about whether climate change even exists. And I think now things seem to be shifting a bit to actually just simple acceptance that climate change is real. But you don't see the media making connections between, for example, a heat wave in one place, a flood in another place. It's just seen as these separate events, as opposed to seeing it as part of this larger trend of havoc. It's a controversial one. When you say climate emergency, there's some media outlets that think that's too biased, or that's sort of an activist approach. But it's actually a scientific approach. So I think language is very important. And then I also think we should, as journalists, report on the role of indigenous people and local communities in protecting forests, such as in Congo. We do have a huge responsibility to make those connections and to tell the deeper story about climate change.
Thanks very much for those insights, Zara, and thanks for joining us here on CGTN Africa's digital take on climate change. You can watch Saving the Congo Forests on our documentary platform, Faces of Africa, this coming Sunday at 0930 GMT on DSTV channel 409, Star Times channel 123, and of course on our YouTube channel, CGTN Africa. I'm Daniel Plafker in Nairobi, and this has been CGTN Africa's digital take on climate change. Thanks for watching.